my finger got stuck. Arthritis, I'm trying to wave at you and my finger got stuck. Anyway, my name is Sabne Raznik, and you have found the channel here on YouTube where I make what I call mini readings. Sometimes it's my work, sometimes it's other people's work, and what I'm trying to do on this channel is to build up some kind of library that represents, as far as one person can, a kind of introduction to world poetry. I'm filming this on January 25th, 2025, which might explain why my, oh, it popped, didn't mean to pop it, which might explain the arthritis thing, but anyway, whatever. Was doing a thing with my book club just now. We had a meeting of the book club, and this time we read a book about book thievery. Book thievery is a fascinating thing. In fact, I had some of my own books stolen. I used to be into book collecting myself. I still am in a way, but not like I used to be. I used to be into collecting leather-bound editions, special editions of the classics, and became a bit of addiction, and I had to deal with that, right? I mean, not just a bit of an addiction, it was a full-on addiction, and I had to deal with that. And then the books ended up getting stolen, and then that's what really was the turning point for me, because it was like, here I am, a disabled person, right, on a fixed income, and I spent sometimes my, I'm just going to tell on myself, sometimes my grocery budget on one book. I mean, it was an addiction, and that's what happens when you have an addiction. I mean, there are worse addictions out there. It's not like it was, well, I don't know if I can say those words on YouTube, but I do have a habit of, that's why I didn't monetize this channel, so that I didn't have to deal with the censorship bots. But that doesn't mean that YouTube does not occasionally bury my videos anyway, when I still use words that YouTube does not approve of. It just means that they don't necessarily take my videos down or whatever, but they will still make it to where I don't get views. But anyway, it's not like it's, you know, some of the more harmful addictions that a person can get. So there are worse addictions out there, but addictions have the same nature regardless of what you're addicted to, right? So sometimes I would like spend my whole grocery budget on one book, and then I would go to my grandfather. My granddaddy loved me so much. I miss him. He died in 2017. But I would be like, went to Barnes & Noble, and I haven't been in Barnes & Noble in years because of this, you know, right? Like, if you have an addiction, you have to, and you want to shut that addiction down, you have to completely shut yourself off from things. And Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and those big box bookstores were part of my, I need to shut myself down from access to these places, right? Well, anyway, it's like, I went to Barnes & Noble, and they had this particular book that was bound in this particular way, and oops, and he wasn't going to let me starve, right? Good old granddaddy. But anyway, that's whenever I realized I had a problem. And then whenever all the books got stolen, then I was like, what was it all for? Because now they're all gone. No more. You know? It's like I realized I had the problem when I spent my grocery budget. But then when all the books got stolen, it was like, well, what's it all for? It was all for nothing. And that was kind of the end of it. That was the end of it. But I do still, up until the point where the disability that I have cerebral palsy, that itself does not progress. Like, the original brain injury that causes cerebral palsy does not get worse as you age, but the impacts that it causes to your body do. Like, they call it post-impairment syndrome, because like you'll develop arthritis, you'll get certain vein and artery diseases. They don't even really know everything that happens to you as a person with cerebral palsy as you age, because almost all of the research for people with cerebral palsy goes to children with cerebral palsy, because that's when they can intervene to make your quality of life better. But then once you reach the age of 18 or 21, you age out of that medical care, and your medical care pretty much stops, and then you go into the general medical care system, and there's really not any research done from that point forward into what happens to you as a person with cerebral palsy from that point forward, and there's not a lot of medical care for you after that beyond what an able-bodied person medical care, so it's really difficult for adults with cerebral palsy going forward. The system is just not there for them. But they do know that you get something called post-impairment syndrome. They're just not sure exactly what that means going forward, but it does mean that your quality of life over time tanks into the toilet. And at this point in my life, I am pretty much housebound, and just my life just continues to get smaller, like the horizons of my life, and that will continue to be the case as long as I continue to be alive. It's a thing. So that means that I'm not able to brick and mortar shop anymore. Like I have to have somebody to go grocery shopping for me and run errands for me most of the time. Stuff like that. Nowadays, the only time I leave the house most of the time is to go to the doctor. The rest of the time, somebody else does that, and I stay home because it's just it's exhausting. That's the biggest thing, is the energy drain. My mobility is next to nothing, and there are other things that come into play that are not polite to talk about on a public forum. So that means that my opportunities to shop are limited. I know Amazon gets a lot of flack these days as being not a very moral place to shop, and I get that. But for people like me, Amazon is a godsend. I know Jeff Bezos is like the new public enemy number one, in terms of in the same way that the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers and all that were public enemy robber baron number one during the Gilded Age. And I get it, right? I've read the news, I get it. But for people like me, being able to order stuff online and have it shipped to your house is a godsend. And where I live, being Appalachia, there are a lot of amenities that other people have that I don't have. Like, I don't have DoorDash, and I don't have, things like that. So, Amazon really is the thing. But my point is, I used to, while I was still mobile, and after I had pretty much conquered the biggest part of my addiction was, the last holdout was Goodwill. And I know Goodwill gets a lot of flack too, and not without cause, but I still am a supporter of Goodwill, and this is why, okay? Because Goodwill is one of the few places that will hire disabled people, okay? And I know the whole Americans with Disability Act says that under United States law that employers must hire disabled people and supply them with adequate accommodations to do the job. But in actual practice, they do not do that. That law is not enforced. It just, it's one of those things that it's one of those aspects of the law that it's just not put into practice, and it is not enforced. And these big corporations know that they have the money and the lawyers. Like, if you were to sue them for discrimination, they have the money and the lawyers to keep it in court indefinitely, and you do not. So you may be right, you may be legitimately discriminated against, but you do not have the money to stay in court indefinitely. Your money is going to run out before theirs does, and they know it. And that's the grounds they stand on, and that's why that law cannot be enforced. It's simple as that. But anyway, and goodwill is one of the possibly, whisper word here for that, because I don't know for certain, but as far as I know, Goodwill may be the only employer who actually hires disabled people. Is it a perfect business? No, but they do actually follow the ADA law on that. So I support Goodwill. But anyway, while the rest of my family was going, let's get skirts and dresses for really cheap, because it's great for that, as is any thrift store, or was anyway, because thrift stores are becoming the new place for rich people to shop, and it's driving prices up, and I reckon they're not a place for poor people anymore. But while everybody else was doing that, and that's legit, because, we used to wear a lot of dresses back in the day. I still do, because for me, dresses are easier to put on than pants, just because of the nature of my disability. I'm not very flexible, so dresses for me are easier, depending on the dress, and especially since I gave up on pantyhose. So I wore pantyhose for years, and then about 5 years ago, I finally said, look, this is an absolute World War III to put these things on. Forget it. It's almost impossible just to put socks on. I'm not fighting the pantyhose anymore. We're just going to go with, I don't care what convention says. I'm going to wear my dress and socks, because it's what I can do. Anyway, that's another thing that people don't really think about with people with disability, is that clothes designers do not design accessible clothing. It's a whole thing, and there is more awareness around it now than there used to be. If you get on your favorite internet search provider and search about the clothes for disabled people, you will see what I mean. It is a thing. It's like you would think that anybody could put on a t-shirt. No. But anyway, I can talk about disability issues forever. But anyway, while everybody else was looking for dresses and skirts like that, I would be back in the book section, because Goodwill is a treasure trove of books. Because Goodwill is all about where people, after people die, and their family members are trying to figure out what to do with their estates and their stuff, they will bag it all up, right? They will bag up these people's estates, take it to Goodwill, and just dump it in mass. That's what Goodwill is. That's what most thrift stores are. So you go to Goodwill, and there would be these books, right, that people would have no idea what they had. Maybe they didn't even go through them to begin with. And sometimes you can get these really valuable books for just a couple of dollars. And I have particular publishers that I look for. Out of print books from particular publishers. I also tend to look for really old books, especially those that are so old that they predate the copyright laws, so they don't even have a copyright date on the title page, but there are particular editions or whatever that you also need to look for. I'm not as knowledgeable about this as some people are, but I'm always excited when I find like some special book at Goodreads that somebody didn't even know what they had, right? A lot of times you can find some really old book, rare book at Goodreads for just a couple dollars because somebody had no idea what they had, or they didn't even look through the stuff. They just gathered it up and took it to Goodwill, right? Because they're just wanting to get rid of this stuff. And that's legit. That's legit because when somebody dies, there is so much to take care of. Usually you have to do it in a short period of time because there are, especially when it comes to houses and stuff, there are laws about deadlines and stuff like that that have to be met. And so people are just like overwhelmed with stuff that they have to do and overwhelmed with literal stuff, with lives worth of stuff. And they're like, what do I do with it? Oh, just take it to Goodwill, and sometimes they won't even go through it. And the most amazing stuff will end up just dumped at Goodwill. And so back when I was able, that would be like, everybody else would be like going through the clothes section, and I'm like back in the book section, going through the book section, book by book by book by book, because you just never know what you'll find back there. So anyway, we were reading this book about book thievery, and of course, along with that, in the book comes all this talk about manuscripts and rare books and book fairs and places where you can find rare books. And it did mention Goodwill towards the end of the book and all this, and it just got me thinking about all that, right? So it made me go back because most of my collectible books and all that are gone. Like I said, a lot of my books got stolen or damaged or whatever over the course of my life. But I do have a few really, really, really old books that I still have that have managed to make it through with me. And I have them put away. They're not on general display for everybody. They're in a different room. And they're put away because I don't want them where a child can just, because my bookshelves here in the living room are low. They're low because everywhere I go, we either have to remodel or build straight from scratch so that everything is handicap accessible, which means everything is lower than it would be for an able-bodied person. And I'm always telling everybody, handicap accessible design is universal design, because an able-bodied person could walk into my house the way it's set up. It looks different to them. It feels different to them because it is different, but there is not a single thing in this house that they cannot also use. Okay. Yes, the counters are slightly lower and all that, but they can use it. There is nothing that they cannot also use. So it's like, why not automatically handicap design? Because it's not like it's going to be inconvenient in any way for the able-bodied person to use it. But that's another thing also. Well, the dog is seeing something outside. Let's hope she doesn't make too much noise. Okay, Joy, Mommy's making a video. Mommy's working. Okay? Let's be quiet. So anyway, which means my bookshelves here are low. So like when I have kids come in here, they can just walk in and grab a book off the shelf, right? Well, I don't want my really, really old, especially some of them are kind of fragile, my really, really old, valuable books to be right here where a child can just come in and pull them off and damage them, right? So they're in another room away where I'm not just going to let the general public go into that room. That's one of my more private rooms, right? Just as a protection for the book. They're also still low to the ground, but it's a room that you're not just going to let just anybody go in that room. Because you don't let everybody go into every room in your house, right? There are some rooms that are more private than others. Well, anyway, reading that book in the book club made me go back to some of those older books, pull one off the shelf. This is The Song of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. As you can see, it's really old. In fact, when I first got it, you could see the gilding on this a little bit better, but I've had it I think I found it in 2002 at Goodwill. It's a Goodwill book, I think. It's either a Goodwill book or my great uncle Jackie's wife, Sandy. So, my Aunt Sandy. Uncle Jackie being my granddaddy's brother, gave it to me, one or the other. And I'm really sad that I can't remember for certain whether it came from Uncle Jackie's house or not. He lived in Tennessee, and he got leukemia in the around 2012 or so. And my mom would go down and house sit for them while he would go somewhere for his treatments. But it wasn't in Tennessee. It was like it was like way far away. I don't remember for certain where. It was like in Texas or something. It was way far away because he would have to take a plane. And because he had leukemia, and planes circulate the same air, he couldn't be on a commercial flight. It was a big deal. But so they would be gone for like weeks at a time while he was in the hospital. So she would go down there and house sit, take care of the house, take care of their dog while they were gone. It must not have come from them then, because that would have been like 2012, because that was after my nephew died of leukemia, and he died in 2010, and that was after that. And yeah, I got this book in 2002. In fact, when I read a book, this is one of the ways I keep up with which books on my shelf I have read and which books I haven't, is when I have finished reading a book, I write my name in it. And if my name is not written in the book, then I haven't read it yet. It's just a personal system that helps me know, because we all have more books than we've read yet, right? And this one has my name in it, and it has the date. So, October 19th, 2002. So I must have gotten it either in 2002 or shortly before that. So it had to have come from Goodwill. So there we go. That solves that. But anyway, I wanted to read an excerpt from that on this channel because it is an old, rare book. This was published by Thompson and Thomas in Chicago. It's the Minnehaha edition with illustrations. Quite nice illustrations, too. And because of that, the paper, even though it's so old, you can feel that it was quite glossy. And it has a little introduction to it that I found quite interesting, because it tells you, let me find it. Okay. It tells you where Henry Longfellow came across the idea, the Song of Hiawatha. Hiawatha was a real person, but he became a legend even among his own people. And you know what happens when people are legendized, at least certainly back then, and certainly among the indigenous also. when you're dealing with oral histories, especially of people, when they become legendary, they become mythologized. And what I mean by mythologized is that the stories around them become larger than life. Some of the things that Hiawatha did, we can be fairly certain he actually did them. Some of them are almost like, it has a mythological component, almost like Zeus and Superman. So a human being, he could not have actually done those things, right? So he was a real person. There is truth in this legend, but it has, by the time Henry Wadsworth Longfellow came to write it down, Hiawatha had become so much bigger than that. He was an Ojibwe, and I'm part Cherokee, and the Cherokee are kind of related to the Ojibwe. They're more related to the Iroquois. I'm not sure if Iroquois. I've heard it said both ways. Now I know that the Cherokee language is an Iroquois language, and the Ojibwe. They're all kind of the same family of indigenous, which is not true of all of North America's indigenous. Just so you know, because something I've been watching these you know how the reels and shorts and stuff, and I think what they are is they're all like stuff from TikTok that has been syndicated onto Facebook and YouTube, but originally on TikTok. But there's this one guy who's from England, and he came to Appalachia and spent part of December, I think, and most of January in Appalachia. And he was like posting reels about his experience, and it's been real fun because like I'm Appalachian. I've been here my whole life, so it's kind of interesting to experience Appalachia through his eyes of somebody who's never been here before, and it being brand new. It's like almost like seeing it through a child's eyes almost. In a way, it kind of helped me to understand why the original colonists died en masse in their first winter, because I didn't realize. I mean, I knew that the climate of the British Isles is extremely different from the U.S., but I didn't know it was that different, because he was just like, it's been a snowier winter here than normal. We don't usually have snow on the ground for a whole month at a time in Central Appalachia, because he was in West Virginia. But he was like, it's a blizzard! It's a blizzard! Oh, I'm gonna die! It's so cold! And it's like, this is not a blizzard. Blizzards happen in the Plain States and in the Dakotas. This is just snow, okay? Stuff like that. It's like, okay, I'm starting to see why the colonists needed the indigenous help to survive the first winter. Stuff like it was really cute. I really enjoyed it. And but he was doing these reels, and there was a point, and I lost it. I hate it when I do this, because it had to do with Hiawatha. I hate it when I do this. I've lost it. Oh, come on. He was so cute doing those reels. I enjoyed him so much. I've never had TikTok, but you know how it syndicates them. Talking about how Hiawatha has become a myth. I hate it when I do this. I've just lost that thought completely. It's gone. And I do that more often since I've been on certain medication. It's a medication thing. I could talk to my doctor about it, but the medication actually works for the purpose it's intended for, and I don't know if we should mess with that. Even though it's causing me major issues, because the issue that I need the medication for is also a major issue. Whatever. Anyway, Hiawatha, there's a lot of controversy around. We'll just, because I can't remember that. He was so cute. I love that guy. Watching him experience Appalachia was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of controversy around Henry Wadsworth Longfellow recording this legend. I'll call it a legend, even though, like I said, Hiawatha was a real person, but it has become a legend, Because, of course, Longfellow is a European dude. And there's that thing. People are like, we should get this story from the source, and that's legit. That's legit. But as far as I know, the Ojibwe people have never stepped forward and put the source out, put it out from the source in the same manner. And as far as I know, it could have happened, and it's just not gained the popularity. But so there's a lot of controversy around that. Kind of like how Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, there's a lot of controversy around that now. But I would put the same arguments in favor of the Song of Hiawatha that I would toward Harriet Beecher Stowe's book. Yes, it's in light of modern, where we are in the modern sense, got a lot of problems. But we have to view things in their historical context, or we lose the whole point. If we start wanting to cancel Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin because we have problems with it now, then we lose the point that slavery may not have ever ended if Uncle Tom's Cabin had not been published. It was a major catalyst to cause people to become abolitionists. It really was. So there may be, some people may take real issue with Harriet Beecher Stowe's book now, and legitimately so. But within the context of its time, it was revolutionary, and it changed the course of history. And to villainize it, to take today's view of it, and to look at it, to try to put today's view on yesterday, is to misunderstand everything. You cannot do that. You cannot do that, because you end up misunderstanding everything. And that's why people today miss the point of everything, because they try to see everything through the social lens of today, and you cannot do that. You have to see things through the historical lens in which they existed, or you miss the entire point. And that's the same with the Song of Hiawatha. If you view it through the social lens of today, yes, it's problematic, extremely so, and I'm not denying that. But if you view it within the social context, it was revolutionary. What Longfellow did for the indigenous people in the moment, in that moment of time, was beautiful. Because this story, this myth, would have been lost to time forever. Just like so many other myths and so many other stories. There are entire tribes that are extinct today. Entire indigenous nations that are extinct today. The very indigenous nation that gave the Appalachian Mountains its name is now extinct today, along with their culture, their stories, their language, everything. Now the Ojibwe still exist, Yera. And so does this story, because Longfellow recorded it. And, okay, the Ojibways now, because we are in the social moment we are now, 200 years later, roughly say, not really fully 200 years later, not by a long shot, actually, more like 150 years later, because we are in the social moment we are now, the Ojibwe could probably tell the story from their point of view and have it printed, and it be accepted that way. But when Henry Wadsworth Longfellow printed this, the only way it was going to be preserved at all was if a white man did it. Let's be real. So yes, okay, we can be all mad that a white man did this, but that was the only way it was going to happen. So we need to be real about this and be thankful that he did it. And okay, now the Ojibwe can tell it from their point of view if they want to. Because they're still alive, they can do it. And be thankful that people would be willing to read it, and people will be willing to hear it, because they'll go, that is the Song of Hiawatha from the source. Would they be willing to even, would they even care about it if it hadn't been told by a white man first? Even today, no. Because it would just be another indigenous nation's cultural stories. So what? But because it's the Song of Hiawatha from that nation's viewpoint, it has more value. Sad, but true. We need to be thankful for what this man did. As problematic as it is, we owe this man a debt of gratitude. And I'm saying that as someone who is part Cherokee. And I know that's a controversial point of view, and I know people from both sides are going to come at me for it. But there it is. We have to view these things from the cultural context, the historical context in which they originally existed. We cannot take the social context that we are in the moment and then try to smash that onto that back then and expect to understand it. It's not how that works. In fact, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow didn't just like pull this out of the ground, obviously, because Hiawatha was an actual factual non-fiction human being that actually existed in real life at some point. We do know that. However mythologized and larger than life he became in the actual oral retelling of the history before it got written down. And he got the story as the introductory note says. I'll read the introductory note. Excuse me. Come on now. The Song of Hiawatha first appeared in the text is wearing away. 1855, I think. In it, Mr. Longfellow has woven together the beautiful traditions of the American Indians into one grand and delightful epic poem. The melodies of its rhythm and measure flow from his classic pen in unison with the hoofbeats of the bison, the tremulous thunder of the falls of Minnehaha, and the paddle strokes of the Indian canoeist. And he has done more to immortalize in song and story the life and environments of the red man of America than any other writer save perhaps J. Fenimore Cooper. It was from a perusal of the Finnish epic Kalevala that both the measure and the style of Hiawatha was suggested to Mr. Longfellow. I haven't read this Finnish epic. I've never heard it pronounced. I'm one of those people that I learn things from reading, not from being around other writers. So if I get pronunciations wrong, forgive me. In fact, it might appropriately be named Kalevala. It might appropriately be named the Kalevala of North America. Mr. Longfellow derived his knowledge from Indian legends, from schoolcrafts, algebra researches, and other books, from Heckewelder's narratives, from Black Hawk, with his display of Saxon foxes on Boston Common, Black Hawk being an actual person, okay, and from the Ojibwe chief, Kagigagabo, whom he entertained at his own home. It's written out in syllables, so that's why I stumbled over it. But then, like I said, I'm just not good at pronouncing stuff. Hiawatha had a wide circulation both in America and Europe, and was universally admired by readers and critics on both continents. Large audiences gathered to hear it read by public readers. It's very good for that, it is. It's good to be read out loud. It's just one of those. It was set to music by Stokel, and at the Boston Theater it was rendered with explanatory readings by the famous elocutionist Matilda Heron. The highest encomiums were passed upon it by such critics of ripe scholarship as Emerson and Hawthorne. A part of it was translated into Latin and used as an academic textbook. Those who wish to read more about it will find interest and pleasure in perusing the masterly criticisms of Dr. O.W. Holmes in the Annals of the Massachusetts Historical Society and that of Horatio Hell in the Proceedings of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, 1881. So see, he may have been a columnist, you can call him, writing down these stories, but he got them from an Ojibwe source. I was going to read Hiawatha's Wooing and Hiawatha's Wedding about Minnehaha, which you'll recognize as place names in Wisconsin, I think, or Minnesota, one or the other. I don't remember because medicine. But one or the other. The Ojibwe are the people that lived around the Great Lakes area. And actually, in the story of of Hiawatha, he actually roams like all over the Great Lakes area and up into Canada. I mean, he's just like all over the place, man. So, like almost, especially like around Detroit, and like I said, up into Canada and stuff. Of course, Detroit. I don't know if it actually gets named or not. It did exist by 1855, but I don't know if it gets named as such. But he like roamed all over through there because that was the land of his people. Finish off my tea there. That was tea that I had during the book club meeting. It's gotten cold now. Might as well finish it. Hiawatha's Wooing. Let's hope I do better with this than I did the introduction, huh? let me show you how pretty this book is. Look at this. Right? This is beautiful, this book. It's well worth a couple dollars I probably spent for it at Goodwill. I've tried to take good care of it. But of course, even sitting on my shelves, it's fading a bit, but because I'm not a museum curator or anything, I can't take impeccable care of it, but I've tried to handle it with much care. Hiawatha's wooing. As unto the bow the cord is, so unto the man is woman. Though she bends him, she obeys him. Though she draws him, yet she follows, useless each without the other. Thus the youthful Hiawatha said unto himself and pondered, much perplexed by various feelings, listless, longing, hoping, fearing, dreaming still of Minnehaha, of the lovely laughing water in the land of the Dakotas. Wed a maiden of your people, warning said the old Nokomis. Go not eastward, go not westward, for a stranger whom we know not. Like a fire upon the hearthstone is a neighbor's homely daughter. Like the starlight or the moonlight is the handsomest of strangers. Thus dissuading spake Nokomis, and my Hiawatha answered only this. Dear old Nokomis, very pleasant is the firelight, but I like the starlight better. Better do I like the moonlight. Gravely then said old Nokomis, bring not here an idle maiden, bring not here a useless woman, hands unskilful, feet unwilling, bring a wife with nimble fingers, heart and hand that move together, feet that run on willing errands. I understand the need for that back then, because living was hard back then. Living was hard back then, but nowadays it reads up a little bit ableist. But see, that's just, we can't put the modern day prism on things from back then, because life was hard back then. You literally lived by the skin of your teeth. You had to make your own clothes. You had to go out and hunt for food and grow it. You couldn't just go to the store. I get it. And if you were disabled, you lived because other people brought you stuff. Well, you still do, very much, too. Let's be real, you still do. You live because other people are kind. Like I said, people run my errands and stuff. You live because other people are kind. And you're very much aware of it. Anyway. Smiling answered Hiawatha, in the land of the Dakotas lives the arrow maker's daughter, Minnehaha, laughing water, handsomest of all the women. I will bring her to your wigwam. She shall run upon your errands, be your starlight, moonlight, firelight, be the sunlight upon my people. Still dissuading, said Nokomis, bring not to my lodge a stranger from the land of the Dakotas. Very fierce are the Dakotas. Often there is war between us. There are feuds, yet unforgotten, wounds that ache and still may open. Laughing, answered Hiawatha, for that reason, if no other, would I wed the fair Dakota, that our tribes might be united, that old feuds might be forgotten, and old wounds be healed forever. Thus departed Hiawatha to the land of the Dakotas, to the land of handsome women, striding over moor and meadow. I must say, yes, the Dakotas, handsome women. And so are the Cherokee. Striding over moor and meadow, through interminable forest, through uninterrupted silence, with his moccasins of magic at each stride, a mile he measured, yet the way seemed long before him. And his heart outrun his footsteps, and he journeyed without resting till he heard the cataracts thunder, heard the falls of Minnehaha calling to him through the silence. Pleasant is the sound, he murmured, pleasant is the voice that calls me. On the outskirts of the forest, twixt the shadow and the sunshine, herds of fallow deer were feeding, but they saw not Hiawatha. To his bow he whispered, fell not. To his arrow whispered, swerve not. Sent it singing on its errand to the red heart of the roebuck, threw the deer across his shoulder, and sped forward without pausing. I don't know about that. Now, every nation has its own customs and all that, but I do know that some nations, when they would hunt and kill, they would always pause to thank the animal for the life that it sacrificed so that they could eat. So there would be a pause. I don't know, but like I said, every nation has its own customs. A lot of people, for the longest time, had this idea that one Native American is the same as all the others. Every nation had its own customs and its own ways of doing things. At the doorway of his wigwam sat the ancient arrow maker in the land of the Dakotas, making arrowheads of jasper, arrowheads of chalcedony. At his side, in all her beauty, sat the lovely Minnehaha. Sat his daughter, Laughing Water, plaiting mats of flags and rushes. Of the past the old man's thoughts were, and the maidens of the future. He was thinking as he sat there of the days when with such arrows he had struck the deer and bison on the muscadet, the meadow, shot the wild goose flying southward on the wing, the clamorous wawa. Thinking of the great war parties, how they came to buy his arrows, could not fight without his arrows. Ah, no more such noble warriors could be found on earth as they were. Now the men were all like women, only used their tongues for weapons. She was thinking of a hunter from another tribe and country, young and tall and very handsome, who one morning in the springtime came to buy her father's arrows. Sat and rested in the wigwam, lingered long about the doorway, looking back as he departed. She had heard her father praise him, praise his courage and his wisdom. Would he come again for arrows to the falls of Minnehaha? On the mat, her hands lay idle and her eyes were very dreamy. Through their thoughts they heard a footstep, heard a rustling in the branches, and with a glowing cheek and forehead, with the deer upon his shoulders, suddenly from out the woodlands, Hiawatha stood before them. Straight the ancient arrow maker looked up gravely from his labor, laid aside the unfinished arrow, bade him enter at the doorway, saying as he rose to meet him, Hiawatha, you are welcome. At the feet of Laughing Water, Hiawatha laid his burden, threw the red deer from his shoulders, and the maiden looked up at him, looked up from her mat of rushes, said with gentle look and accent, You are welcome, Hiawatha. Very spacious was the wigwam, made of deerskin, dressed and whitened, with the gods of the Dakotas drawn and painted on its curtains, and so tall the doorway, hardly Hiawatha stooped to enter, hardly touched his eagle feathers as he entered at the doorway. Then uprose the Laughing Water from the ground. Fair Minnehaha laid aside her mat unfinished, brought forth food and set before them. Water brought them from the brooklet, gave them food in earthen vessels, gave them drink in bowls of basswood? Basswood? I'm going to have to search that. See what that is. I'm sure it's like something really simple and I'll laugh at myself. Listened while the guest was speaking, listened while her father answered. But not once her lips she opened, not a single word she uttered. Yes, as in a dream she listened to the words of Hiawatha, as he talked of old Nokomis, who had nursed him in his childhood, as he told of his companions. Chibi-Abos, the musician and a very strong man, Quasind, and of happiness and plenty in the land of the Ojibways, in the pleasant land and peaceful. After many years of warfare, many years of strife and bloodshed, there is peace between the Ojibways and the tribe of the Dakotas. Thus continued Hiawatha, and then added, speaking slowly, that this peace may last forever, and our hands be clasped more closely, and our hearts be more united. Give me as my wife this maiden, Minnehaha, Laughing Water, loveliest of Dakota women. And the ancient arrow maker paused a moment ere he answered, smoked a little while in silence, looked at Hiawatha proudly, fondly looked at Laughing Water, and made answer very gravely, yes, if Minnehaha wishes, let your heart speak, Minnehaha. And the lovely Laughing Water seemed more lovely as she stood there, neither willing nor reluctant, as she went to Hiawatha, softly took the seat beside him, while she sat and blushed to say it, I will follow you, my husband. This was Hiawatha's wooing. Thus it was he won the daughter of the ancient arrow maker in the land of the Dakotas. From the wigwam he departed, leaving with him Laughing Water. Hand in hand they went together through the woodland and the meadow, left the old man standing lonely at the doorway of his wigwam, heard the falls of Minnehaha calling to them from the distance, crying to them from the distance, crying to them from afar off, fare thee well, O Minnehaha. And the ancient arrow maker turned again into his labor, sat down by his sunny doorway, murmuring to himself and saying, thus it is our daughters leave us, those we love and those who love us, just when they have learned to help us. When we are old and lean upon them, comes a youth with flaunting feathers, with his flute of reeds. A stranger wanders piping through the village, beckons to the fairest maiden, and she follows where he leads her, leaving all things for the stranger. Not in all nations. In some nations, the woman owned the house. And when a man got married, he went to the woman's people, and became part of the woman's family. And she had the right to divorce him if she so felt. And when she did, all she had to do was just put his things outside the house, and they were divorced because the house was hers, and he would go back to his people. And so in those cases, the woman wouldn't leave because the husband would come to her. It depends. See, every nation was different. Some nations were it's called matrilineal. Not matriarchal. That's different. Matrilineal. Some nations were matrilineal. Apparently the Dakotas were not, or else, I mean, I haven't looked into Dakota culture. I haven't looked very deeply into Ojibwe culture either. It could just be because this is Longfellow writing this. But, it is true that some nations were more patriarchal than others. But I know for a fact that in some nations it was matrilineal, and so when they married, the husband went to the wife's family, and the children were considered part of the wife's family, not the husband's, and all of that. The house belonged to the wife, and all of that. So it just all depends on the nation. Anyway, okay. Pleasant was the journey homeward, through interminable forests, over meadow, over mountain, over river, hill, and hollow. But I'm Appalachian, so I say holler. Short it seemed to Hiawatha, though they journeyed very slowly, though his pace he checked and slackened to the steps of Laughing Water. Over wide, that's right, because he was mythical, right? One step was a mile. Minnehaha may not have been so mythical. It's been a long time since I've read this. Long enough to forget, apparently. Over wide and rushing rivers in his arms he bore the maiden. Light he thought her as a feather, as the plume upon his headgear, cleared the tangled pathway for her, bent aside the swaying branches, made at night a lodge of branches and a bed with boughs of hemlock, and a fire before the doorway with the dry cones of the pine tree. All the traveling winds went with them o'er the meadow, through the forest. All the stars of night looked at them, watched with sleepless eyes their slumber. From his ambush in the oak tree peeped the squirrel. The squirrel has quite the name. Hang on. Agidaumo? Agidaumo? Watched with eager eyes the lovers, and the rabbit, the wabasso, scampered from the path before them, peeping from his burrow, sat erect upon his haunches, watched with curious eyes the lovers. Pleasant was the journey homeward. All the birds sang loud and sweetly songs of happiness and heart's ease. Sang the bluebird, the oasa. Happy are you, Hiawatha, having such a wife to love you. Sang the opeechee, the robin. Happy are you, laughing water, having such a noble husband. From the sky the sun, benignant, looked upon them through the branches, saying to them, O my children, love is sunshine, hate is shadow, life is checkered shade and sunshine. Roll by love, O Hiawatha. From the sky the moon looked at them, filled the lodge with mystic splendors, whispered to them, O my children, day is restless, night is quiet, man imperious, woman feeble. Yeah, that doesn't sound like an indigenous concept at all. They did not consider a woman feeble. Yeah, I can see how this is problematic. But like I said, you have to view it through a historic prism, or else you're going to misunderstand everything. Because that is not an indigenous concept at all. Let me find it. Half is mine, although I follow, ruled by patience, laughing water. Thus it was they journeyed homeward. Thus it was that Hiawatha to the lodge of old Nokomis brought the moonlight, starlight, firelight, brought the sunshine of his people, Minnehaha, laughing water, handsomest of all the women in the land of the Dakotas, in the land of handsome women. Hiawatha's wedding feast. You shall hear how Papakiwas, how the handsome Yenadisa danced at Hiawatha's wedding, how the gentle Chibiabos, I feel like I said that once before, and I don't know if I said it the same. He, the sweetest of musicians, sang his songs of love and longing, how Iagu, the great boaster, he the marvelous storyteller, told his tales of strange adventure, that the feast might be more joyous, that the time might pass more gaily, and the guests be more contented. Sumptuous was the feast Nokomis made at Hiawatha's wedding. All the bowls were made of basswood. I'm going to call it basswood. White and polished very smoothly. All the spoons of horn of bison, black and polished very smoothly. She had sent through all the village messengers with wands of willow, as a sign of invitation, as a token of the feasting, and the wedding guests assembled, clad in all the richest raiments, robes of fur and belts of wampum, splendid with their paint and plumage, beautiful with beads and tassels. First they ate the sturgeon nama and the pike, the maskanazha, caught and cooked by old Nokomis. Then on the pemmican they feasted, pemmican and buffalo marrow, haunch of deer and hump of bison, yellow cakes of the mondamin, and the wild rice of the river. But the gracious Hiawatha and the lovely laughing water and the careful old Nokomis tasted not the food before them. only waited on the others, only served their guests in silence, and when all the guests had finished, old Nokomis, brisk and busy, from an ample pouch of otter, filled the red stone pipes for smoking with tobacco from the Southland. The Southland being the southeast, I think, because tobacco, comes from the Cherokee homeland, which was a completely different way of life, I think. We definitely didn't live in wigwams. But we weren't not nomadic either, but we didn't live in wigwams. Mixed with bark of red willow, and with herbs and leaves of fragrance. Then she said, O Palpakiwis, dance for us, your merry dancers, dance the beggars, dance to please us, that the feast may be more joyous, that the time may pass more gaily, and our guests be more contented. Then the handsome Palpakiwis, he the idle Yenandiza, he the merry mischief maker, whom the people called the Stormful, rose among the guests assembled. Skilled was he in sports and pastimes, in the merry dance of snowshoes, in the play of quoits and ball play. Skilled was he in games of hazard, in all games of skill and hazard. I'm going to mess these all up. Here we go. Pugasing the bowl encounters, Kuntasu the game of plumstones. The warriors called him faint-heart, called him coward, Shaugodaya, idler, gambler, Yenadiza. Little heeded he their jesting, little cared he for their insults, for the women and the maidens loved the handsome Palpakiwis. He was dressed in shirt of doeskin, white and soft, and fringed with ermine, all inwrought with beads of wampum. He was dressed in deerskin leggings, fringed with hedgehog quills and ermine, and in moccasins of buckskin, thick with quills and beads embroidered. On his head were plumes of swan's down, on his heels were tails of foxes. In one hand a fan of feathers, and a pipe was in the other, barred with streaks of red and yellow, streaks of blue and bright vermilion, shone the face of Palpakiwis. From his forehead fell his tresses, smooth and parted like a woman's, shining bright with oil and plaited, hung with braids of scented grasses. As among the guests assembled, to the sound of flutes and singing, to the sound of drums and voices, rose the handsome Palpakiwis, and he began his mystic dances. First he danced a solemn measure, very slow in step and gesture, in and out among the pine trees, through the shadows and the sunshine, treading softly like a panther, then more softly and still swifter, whirling, spinning round in circles, leaping o'er the guests assembled, eddying round and round the wigwam, till the leaves went whirling with him, till the dust and wind together swept in eddies round about him. Then along the sandy margin of the lake, the big sea water, on his bed with frenzied gesture, stamped upon the sand and tossed it wildly in the air around him, till the wind became a whirlwind, till the sand was blown and sifted like great snowdrifts o'er the landscape, heaping all the shores with sand dunes, sand hills of the Nagao Wuju. Thus the merry Palpakiwis danced his beggar's dance to please them, and returning sat down laughing there among the guests assembled, sat and fanned himself serenely with his fan of turkey feathers. Then they said to Chibiobus, to the friend of Hiawatha, to the sweetest of all singers, to the best of all musicians, sing to us, O Chibios, O Chibio. Come on, mouth. Sing to us, O Chibiobus. That's not what I said. But I'm going to move on. Songs of love and songs of longing, that the feast may be more joyous, that the time may pass more gaily, and our guests be more contented, and the gentle Chibi Abbas, I did it again, sing in accents sweet and tender, sang in accents sweet and tender, sang in tones of deep emotion, songs of love and songs of longing, looking still at Hiawatha, looking at fair laughing waters, sang he softly, sang in this wise, on away, awake, beloved, thou the wild flower of the forest, thou the wild bird of the prairie, thou with eyes so soft and fawn-like, if thou only lookest at me, I am happy as the lilies of the prairie when they feel the dew upon them. Sweet thy breath is as the fragrance of the wild flowers in the morning. As the fragrance is at evening in the moon when leaves are falling, does not all the blood within me leap to meet thee, as the springs to meet the sunshine and the moon when nights are brightest. On away my heart sings to thee, sings with joy when thou art near me, as the singing branches in the pleasant moon of strawberries. Strawberries have significance to married couples in the in the Cherokee storytelling. It may be true of the Ojibwe as well. So I called that, but it's also maybe because you know how each month the moon has a name. Like in January it's the wolf moon, and then there's the pink moon and the hunter's moon in October, I think. Well, each native nation also has names for the moons of every month, and it's different depending on the nation. So that may also be what's happening here. It may be a time reference that I don't know to tell you what time, but it may be a time reference. When thou art not pleased, beloved, then my heart is sad and darkened as the shining river darkens when the clouds drop shadows on it. When thou smilest, my beloved, then my troubled heart is brightened as in sunshine gleam the ripples that the cold wind makes in rivers. Smiles the earth and smile the waters, smile the cloudless skies above us. But I lose the way of smiling when thou art no longer near me. I myself, behold me, blood of my beating heart, behold me. Oh, awake, awake, beloved, on away, awake, beloved. Thus the gentle Chibi Abos, that's what I'm going to go with, Chibi Abos, sang, because that's what my mouth wants to say, sang his song of love and longing, and Iago, the great boaster, he the marvelous storyteller, he the friend of old Nokomis, jealous of the sweet musician, jealous of the applause they gave him, saw in all the eyes around him, saw in all their looks and gestures that the wedding guests assembled longed to hear his pleasant stories, his immeasurable falsehoods. Very boastful was Iago. Never heard he an adventure, but he himself had met a greater. Never any deed of daring, but himself had done a bolder. Never any marvelous story, but himself could tell a stranger. Would you listen to his boasting? Would you only give him credence? No one ever shot an arrow half so far and high as he had, ever caught so many fishes, ever killed so many reindeer, ever trapped so many beaver. None could run so fast as he could. None could dive so deep as he could. None could swim so far as he could. None had made so many journeys. None had seen so many wonders as this wonderful Iago, as this marvelous storyteller. Thus his name became a byword and a jest among the people. And whene'er a boastful hunter praised his own address too highly, or a warrior home returning talked too much of his achievements, all his hearers cried, Iago, here's Iago come among us. He it was who carved the cradle of the little Hiawatha, carved its framework out of linden, bound it strong with reindeer sinews. He it was who taught him later how to make his bows and arrows, how to make the bows of ash tree, and the arrows of the oak tree. So among the guests assembled at my Hiawatha's wedding sat Iago, old and ugly, old and ugly, sat the marvelous storyteller, and they said, "O good Iago, tell us now a tale of wonder. Tell us of some strange adventure, that the feast may be more joyous, that the time may pass more gaily, and our guests be more contented." That's funny because that reminded me of my great great grandparents. My mom used to say that, like, they had people like that they had as that his name became a Ballard. They were indigenous too, you know. I mean, my great great grandparents. Wait, let me say that again. Great grandparents, my great grandparents. They had people. She said they had people like that they would do that with, and whenever you would do certain things, they'd be like, "There you go, acting like so and so." And she said she didn't always know the person they were referring to, but she understood what it meant. You know, like, don't be doing that because you're acting like so and so, even though she didn't know who that person was. And so that's funny because when I was reading through that, that his name became a Ballard and all, it just made me think of that. Look at, I'm just going to just say a random name to give you an idea. Like, say, like one thing that the kids in my generation and used to do when we were, like, when we get all gussied up, we call it, we put on our fancy clothes, or we get dressed up in our Sunday best, I guess you could call it, for an event of anything, like, be it family reunion or whatever you want to dress up for. I guess people don't really dress up for stuff anymore like they used to, but, you know, back in the day when there was a special event, you would dress up for it, like Apple Blossom Festival or something. You wouldn't just go in your everyday clothes. You would put on your Sunday best and go. I don't think people do that anymore, but back then you would. So you get all gussied up to go, you know. You didn't just, when you go to town, like, say you go to the county seat town, you wouldn't just go to town and whatever. Of course, I think now they do, but back then you wouldn't. And just like 40 years ago, you wouldn't. Just like 20 years ago, you wouldn't. You'd get gussied up. You'd put on your good clothes to go to town, you know. So, like, anytime us kids would get gussied up, we'd go to the adults and we'd be, like, showing off our clothes. Like, do I look pretty? Or something, you know. And it was just a thing that we could do when you're a kid. It doesn't really mean anything, but you do it. So say, like, one of us would be doing that, and Mama would be like, "Look at there at Polly showing off her gussies." I didn't know who Polly was, but I knew what it meant, that I was being a little bit too big for my britches kind of thing. Yeah, that's what that reminded me. Anyway. Okay. We're about done. And it must just be an indigenous thing. And you know what? Polly was probably somebody that she grew up with that wasn't even alive anymore by then, you know, but we still knew it was. It's probably an indigenous thing. And Iago answered straightway, "You shall hear a tale of wonder. You shall hear the strange adventures of Osseo, the magician, from the evening star descended." And I'm going to end there because then we go into another chapter called The Son of the Evening Star. So those are the two chapters that I was going to read. So that, I just, I don't think I've read anything on here by Longfellow yet, as far as I know. I've not read anything, as far as I know, on this channel yet from Wendell Berry, which is a name that came up in the book that we read in the book club today, or for the book club today. For some reason his name came up, and I thought, they have this whole book about book thievery and book collecting, and Wendell Berry pops up out of nowhere and talking about tobacco barns and tobacco harvesting, which is something you don't see as much anymore like you used to, which is probably a good thing. But given that it used to have such strong ceremonial roots in the indigenous people, and then it turned into what it did, it's like, I saw somewhere where, I think it was somebody I'm friends with on Facebook, they were saying that their grandma said that tobacco was like the indigenous people's greatest revenge. And I was like, that's hilarious. Or at least it would be, except that the indigenous, they've died of lung cancer and stuff too, just the same. Not from doing it ceremonially, but from smoking cigarettes and stuff, because it's not the tobacco itself so much, it's all the additives. I mean, I don't think smoking anything is healthy, but according to science, but it's, I think it's all unhealthy, but it's, what they added to it when they turn it into cigarettes and tobacco chaw, when people chew it and all of that made it so very bad. It was all bad, but it's so extremely bad. And then whenever people did it ceremonially, it's not like they did it all the time. They just did it for the ceremony. But I'm not condoning any of it, though. But I thought that was funny. It would be funnier if it didn't also affect the indigenous population, what they ended up doing with it. But I thought, I need to read some Wendell Berry on this channel, but I have to find some Wendell Berry first. I thought that I had some of his poems around here somewhere, but I wasn't able to find them today, so we'll have to film that video another day. I've been on here long enough just to make this one. I didn't realize it took me an hour and a half to do that. But there's a lot to talk about when you're going to read from something like the Song of Hiawatha, just like if you were going to sit down and read from Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, because there is so much controversy, and I'm sorry that my mind blanked out over talking about the British guy enjoying Appalachia this winter. There was a point to that was going to tie back in, but it's just gone, and it stayed gone, so sorry. I guess that's why a lot of people who make YouTube videos actually write scripts ahead of time and then read them when they make the video. But I don't like to do that, because I like the organic nature of just getting on here, chattering my way through, and reading. I think it's more personable that way, even though sometimes I end up being embarrassed by the video later, especially if I end up watching it years later. I'm like, oh, that's just because sometimes your views on things change, because you're a human being, and all that, and it just ends up being embarrassing later. But I just think it's more personable that way, and you can tell when people are reading a script. And I just rather get on here and just read the poetry and chatty Cathy. I just feel like that's just more. I don't like the over-edited, overproduced thing that goes on here on YouTube with the really specific it feels over commercialized, which is ridiculous for a platform like YouTube that is supposed to be grassroots, so I just don't do it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you'll come back for more poetry, and then I don't ruin it with my chatty Cathiness, because I am a chatty Cathy. And I'm getting a little bit tired now, because I have been at this all day with the book club meeting before, and I woke up really early this morning in order to get the book read in time, because I waited till last minute to read it so that I wouldn't forget anything before we had the discussion, because of the medication making me forget now. And it's been a long day for me, but I'm going to get off here. I'm going to make me some dinner and watch me some TV and just try to relax now. I hope you enjoyed this, and come back for more poetry on another day. Yes, I hope so. Thank you very much for joining me. You have a fabulous day. I hope good things happen to you. I want good things for everybody. Good things for everybody all the time. Only good things. Only good things, right? Only good things. And Jonadago Ha'i. Till we meet again.